All right. So, first thing is just general information about the math portion. And that's all I'll talk about is number one, there's 60 questions and you'll have an hour to do it. So basically, the way that works out is you get 1 minute per question uh, on the ACT. Now, you guys that are in the classroom here over there on the sideboard is the ACT. How many questions you got to get correct to score whatever you want to score. Obviously, for math, 19 is a big number in the math because if you score 19, then colleges consider you math ready and you can take a credit bearing course when you get to college rather than a developmental studies course. But obviously, different scholarships and things like that. The other score that we really shoot for is a 21 or a 22, which is a good solid score on the ACT. And basically, to get a 22 on the math part of the ACT, you got to get 34 to 35 questions correct. So a little over half. All right. Uh, and right at 30, if you do get half, a 19 is right there at half the questions correct. If you want to get up around a 30, you're going to have to get 50 or so out of the 60 questions correct. Uh, but that's just sort of a general thing. Here are some just general math tips that is on. This is actually on the county website. That I'm trying to see if I can make it any bigger, but it doesn't look like I can. At least I can't figure it out. Uh, so you might not be able to read that, so I'll read through it. Uh, he's given 8 ACT math tips, and I may expand on a little bit. It's all about maximizing your 60 minutes, making sure you have time. Uh, the more mental math you can do, the better on the ACT. Instead of typing everything into your calculator, if you have 4 plus 4, you need to be able to do that in your head. 4 plus 4 is 8. Okay, rather than typing it in a calculator because that takes time to type it in a calculator. But do as much of the simple math in your head as you can. But it does take some practice, so that's something you can work on. Uh, he recommends spending about 20 minutes on the first 30 questions and about 40 minutes on the second 30 questions. So you pace yourself accordingly. And the way the ACT is set up, the questions do get harder as you go. The hardest 10 questions are going to be the last 10 questions on the test. Okay. And sort of to expand on this, what I suggest doing is when you're working the ACT, your math, the part, you should go through the entire test and do the problems that you absolutely know you know how to do first. Okay, that way we don't spend time working on something that we may not understand. That way we can get through all the questions we absolutely understand and know how to do right off the bat. All right. Put a little mark beside it or whatever if it's something. So if it's a question that you think you may know how to do, but you're not absolutely sure, that's what I would go back the second time I go through. And then I would do the problems that I think I know how to do. And I feel like I have a pretty good opportunity at getting. And then what you want to say for the end are the ones that you're going to have to really spend some time on, or you just not sure exactly how you can do them. Okay. And that way you get through all the problems that you do know how to do and you think you know how to do. And all that leaves are problems that maybe you don't even understand. And then we can go through some of these other tricks to try to get through those. And there's one last thing on here talking about that. Avoid rewriting the equation or problem. If you can do the first step in your head, mental math, start by writing down the second step. These are valuable seconds that add up quickly. So you have your booklet. You can write on your booklet. So don't rewrite the original problem. Just go on to the next step. That takes time when you rewrite the original problem that's already in the book. And you can write in your book, I'm pretty sure. Uh, he recommends that if you don't need to write anything down, don't. So don't. If you can do it all in your head, that it's going to be quicker for you, give you more time. Uh, it says seek for deep understanding on a daily basis in class. Do you really understand how and why everything works? If not asked, this will allow you more flexibility in types of problems that can be solved because you don't need to memorize step-by-step process for every type of problem. Make sure the day of the ACT you warm up your brain. Don't let the math section of the ACT be the first thing you think deeply or logically about that day. Your brain needs some time to warm up. It is early in the morning, but do some mental practice. Do a little bit. Just don't show up without having thought about anything. Here's a very good important thing on the ACT. If it says not drawn to scale, they actually are. Any drawings on the ACT are to scale. So if you're looking for an angle and you can look at it and you can get really close by looking at that angle, the drawing is to scale and you can use your vision or your visual there to make a decision. At least you can eliminate some answers probably. So if it looks like 90 degrees, assume that it is 90 degrees. All right. Triple check anything involving negatives. All right. The most common mistake, and this happens in class all the time, is when you're punching into the calculator. If you're wanting to square a negative number, remember you have to put that negative number in parentheses before you square it in the calculator, or else it's going to leave the negative and not square it, and you're going to miss your sign. If you are guessing and checking or using the plug and chug method, always start with the middle answer. So if there's one of these questions where you've got to guess or you're trying to work it backwards, which is a good strategy sometimes, you're just taking answers and plugging in, start with the middle answer because the answers on the ACT are in numerical order. So if you start with the middle answer and it doesn't give you the right thing, you might be able to look at it and say, oh, I need a smaller number. That way you're going to go back up to the first two. Okay. Or you can look at it and work through it and say, oh, I need a bigger number. Then you would know you need one of the bottom two answers. There's always 5 choices on the math part. Research has shown that guessing C at the end of the ACT has not been the best statistically in the past. E or K, which is the last one, has been the correct answer more often than any other options. So here's what I'm going to say about that. If you get through the ACT, you work through all the ones you know how you do. You work through all the ones that you feel pretty good about. Then you start working through ones that you struggle with, or you're having to try to just eliminate some answers. And let's say there's 3 minutes left and you still have 10 questions left on the test. Okay. If you're going to just fill in bubbles, number one, fill in the same bubble for each one. Don't go the A and then E and then B, because statistically speaking, if you put the same answer, you're going to get more correct than if you bounce around. All right. And what this is saying, especially on the last 10 questions of the test, statistically over the last 7, 8 years, 9 years, the last answer has been the correct answer more often. So if you're just going to guess, number one, fill in the same answer. If you want it to be C, that's fine, because really this statistically, it may not hold true for this one. But the biggest thing is to make sure you answer the same one, A, or B, on all the ones you're just completely blind guessing, right? On the ACT, do not leave anything blank. All right, at least fill it in. Okay. A couple other things here. I got a little PowerPoint or a slideshow. This is a little hard to see too. This sort of tells you what the types of problems are on the ACT. And if you'll notice, integrating essential skills, almost half the test is this, where these are typical essential skills that you learn before 8th grade. Okay. So, and these are generally in the first half of the test. Okay. You can get up to 25, it's right about 25 of the questions are going to be simple type calculations that you've known since 8th grade or earlier. Okay. That's the biggest section on the test. And then there's about 5 problems that are with number and quantity, real complex numbers, integers, rational exponents, vectors, matrices. There's about 8 questions that deal with just algebra, solving, graphing, different types of equations, linear, systems of equations. There's also about 8 problems on functions, which we've talked about here a little bit, but function notation, piecewise functions, polynomials, radicals, things like that. There's about 8 questions that involve geometry. There'll be about 8 questions that involve statistics and probability. And then there is, whoops. Let's see if I can go back. Modeling, it says could be upward of 16, where you produce, interpret, understand, evaluate. That's all sort of mixed in there. But once again, 24 or so, about 40 to 43% of the ACT are concepts learned before the 8th grade. Rates, percentages, proportions, area, surface area, volume, median, mean. So make sure we've got that. And then here are just some tips, other tips. If it helps, always try to draw the diagram. If it's giving you something that doesn't give you a picture, draw the diagram. That always makes it easier. Use substitution a lot. A lot of these problems on the ACT, you can actually look at the answers and work backwards. All right. A lot of times, and like I said, if you're just sort of guessing on which one to start with, start in the middle. All right, with the answer in the middle. Looking for right triangles. Remember, we just said that the drawings are to scale. So look to see what you can use for right triangles, or if it's a shape, see if there's a right triangle there that you can use to help you. If there's no numbers, if there's just variables, you can make up numbers to substitute in. Sometimes there's those questions and you can substitute in a number that will make more sense than looking at a variable. If it is a geometry type and it's a weird shape, remember to break weird shapes into shapes that you know or familiar ones. Use the answer choices. That's just what we were talking about, working backwards. And trust your eyes. That's the same thing. Trust the drawing that's there, that it is to scale. All right, and that is it.